Today is Friday the 13th, which means that it is the perfect time to take a trip down to Camp Crystal Lake, set up in a nice cabin, and rank all 12 films in the Friday the 13th franchise. These are just my rankings. A lot of people have a lot of different opinions on this franchise. It is one of the most popular and beloved horror franchises. It's also one of the longest running. Over 40 years now, Friday the 13th has been in pop culture, in audiences' lives, and Jason Voorhees has continued to remain basically an undeniable icon of the horror genre. Now, first thing before I really jump into this is I'm going to just say I haven't watched The New Blood, which I think is part 7, might be 6. I think it's part 7, which I have not watched that in literal years, probably at least a decade. It's funny that Friday the 13th and Halloween, two, of the longest running, most popular horror franchises, would kind of dip into the same territory at a similar time. I think that's just proof to how much these franchises and others were kind of like cheating off each other's notes a bit. Because both have psychic little girls that are descendants of the main villain. And while Halloween kind of took that concept and ran with it for a couple more movies, even, Friday the 13th was like, no, let's cut that out after one. We're done with that. They knew when to cut bait and just go back to what works. So right out of the gate, we are going to put The New Blood in NA, not available. I'm just not going to bother trying to give it a rating. For me, it's been too long since I've seen it. I don't want to just like be harsh on it and say C or a D when in reality I haven't seen it in a long time. So let's start with the one that started it all, Friday the 13th. Unbelievable slasher movie. Kevin Bacon, Betsy Palmer, the iconic score, it just, it took the concept of Halloween with like that stalker serial killer slasher and just cranked everything up. There was more violence, there was more just like flat out scenes of terror, there was more sex and drugs and all of that. Like, it just amped everything up and kind of just pushed slasher movies and horror to that next level where we're going to get that excess of the 80s in particular. So part 1 for me, Elite. I'll watch it anytime it's on TV. I don't care where it's at. I don't care that it's edited for TV. I will watch it all the way through. Similarly, I will watch Friday the 13th Part 2 anywhere it is at. I love Part 2. I'm putting Part 2 up here in Elite as well because this is the first one with Jason. This one expands so much more on his story and is just one of my favorite slashers of all. Not just of the Friday the 13th franchise, but just in general of the entire like subgenre of horror movies. Part 2 also has what is probably my favorite kill of the entire franchise, where Mark, who is bound to a wheelchair, stays behind and plays board games with Vicky, and like all signs point to like they're gonna hook up, and you feel really good for him because he tells the story about how he's gonna walk again and defy doctor's orders, and like it's a really like inspiring moment. And he starts to hear something outside, so he goes outside and he's like, hey, Vicky, and he's looking around and it happens to be pouring rain, and Jason just hits him in the face with a machete, and the force knocks him backwards and just down a gigantic flight of stairs, and the camera like freezes on him going down the stairs with the night, like he's like, ugh, and it freezes, and it's just like, like it's so mean. Like, Jason waits and kills all of these people after they have sex, except here. Mark couldn't get a break. Like, it's tough. And like I said, there's something for everybody in this franchise. So if the first two are a little too, like straightforward horror for you, part three comes in and gave you the early 80s gimmick of the red and blue 3D glasses. That is right. Friday the 13th, part 3D. Watching this on TV now without 3D glasses is incredible. I highly recommend watching it as soon as you can. I think they're all streaming somewhere. I should have checked, but I didn't. I recommend it because everything is like coming at the screen like whoa, like it's incredible. I cannot even fathom what those theaters must have been like in the 80s with people going to see this. Like people must have been losing their minds. All that said though, C tier. It's okay. It's got some memorable stuff in it. The 3D is like an extra added unintentional comedy, but ultimately it like you kind of start to get the idea that they're already kind of running stale on ideas. Brings us to part 4, the final chapter, which is I think well obviously it's the first movie in the franchise to use the word final, but it is not the last, and I love that. This one is going to be my elite tier, probably my last elite tier of the rankings. This movie's incredible. There's so much going on. There's Corey Feldman as Tommy Jarvis is worth the price of admission alone for the weird big glasses, the weird voices, the weird masks he just happens to collect. Like, incredible. Part 4, the final chapter, also features Crispin Glover as Jimmy, one of the ill-fated friends who this is a heater of a performance from start to finish for Crispin here. He's known as such a weird, like, reclusive, selective actor that, like, to see him pop up in this, I need to know, like, what drew him to it, because, like, I feel like he was probably pretty selective, and he is so weird, and he has this weird dance scene, and he hooks up with the girl, and then he goes out to like celebrate. Where's the corkscrew? And he just takes the corkscrew in the hand, and then a meat cleaver to the face, and it is unfortunate. I mean, it's a great executed kill for Jason, but it's a tough short ending to Jimmy. Like, I would have liked him to hang around just a little bit longer because Crispin Glover is insane. Overall, though, this movie is elite to me. It is in that top tier because it is everything that I personally want from a Friday the 13th movie. There is inventive kills. There is ridiculous, over-the-top performances. There's a lot of odd, like, weird humor scattered throughout. It just always plays well for me, and I just always get entertainment value out of it. Then, after dubbing it the final chapter, there was still money to be made. So we go to part 5, A New Beginning, where, again, much like Halloween, they thought, people don't want just Jason. They want Friday the 13th. So let's do, like, anthology style. So the Jason in this movie isn't the Jason Voorhees that we've seen. It's, someone in a hockey mask. At this point, they've jumped so far in time, I think probably to, like, hammer home that it's not Jason Voorhees, that Tommy is played by a completely different actor, and he's, like, an adult now. And so, like, that's kind of tough, because you go from Corey Feldman, who MVP of part 4, and you come back here to he's an adult now, and he's in, like, a mental institution that's not a mental institution. It's kind of like a halfway home. And, it's okay, but, like, just the execution is a little weird. This one has a lot of unintentional comedy as well. In particular, I think Violet is her name, is, like, the emo rock girl, so she's, like, different. So no one knows how to, like, act around her. And she, like, gets in an argument with someone, decides she needs to go to her room and, like, express dance out her feelings, and like Jason comes in behind her, doesn't even let her finish the song. She's dancing, like she's like in a groove dancing to this song, and he just chokes her to death, like in the middle of the song. It's brutal. Um, but for me, I'm gonna put I C tier. I said I was gonna be critical. I can't. I still watch it. I still watch it when it's on. Um, but audiences were more critical than me because part 6, Jason lives. They're like, Jason's back. It's okay, guys. Where they have replaced Tommy Jarvis with another actor. Don't know why. They look a little similar, but like I don't know. Was the first actor busy? Was like I don't know. So not as good as the New Beginning actor for me, especially considering New Beginning ends with a huge cliffhanger. But I will say Jason Lives features the incredible idea to electrocute him back to life. Tommy Jarvis goes to Jason's grave, why they would be like, hey, it's Jason Voorhees, like literally one of the deadliest serial killers we've ever encountered. Like he's killed so many people, and he also just seems to mystically be unable to die. And they just bury him. They just bury him in a cemetery. So Tommy talks his poor friend into going to be like, I need to see that he's dead. I don't believe that he's dead. Then he digs him up and says, oh, I'm so mad. And he like stabs him with this metal rod that then gets struck by lightning that brings him back to life. And like, I love that. And then the rest of the movie runs out of steam pretty quick for me. Again, C tier. I'll still watch it. There's still some inventive stuff, inventive kills. At this point, it's basically like exercises in creativity for the types of kills you're going to get. But that brings us to, I'm just going to put this right up here right now in B tier. Jason Takes Manhattan. Just a masterpiece of schlocky B horror. Little disappointed it's down in B instead of A because he doesn't really take Manhattan. It's like Jason takes a cruise ship and then like attacks Manhattan for the last 20 minutes. But the cruise ship stuff is great, and then you get to New York and you get again one of the best kills in the entire franchise, which is he punches a man's head clean off the top of a building with one punch. It's as incredible. It's more incredible than I'm making it sound. If you've not seen Jason Takes Manhattan, pause this video, check it out. Watch that clip alone. It's incredible. This point, the franchise is like completely leaned in to the kind of leaning towards more that like B movie camp type of horror and focusing less on like straight up horror. They're really playing into the humor of things. Then they kind of ruined that momentum for me, and they bring us Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. That's the second time final, and it's not again. Surprise. So the thing about the final Friday that I don't like is it's not really Jason. Like the beginning is incredible, where he like thinks he's chasing after a girl, and it ends up being like an FBI agent or some type of agent, and like he like walks into this giant police raid where they basically just like bomb him to death and then just pick up the pieces of his body and take him to the lab. And from there, it's basically like the evil spirit of Jason. The morgue examiner eats his heart because he's like hypnotized by the beating of it in his head. It's like Telltale Heart type of scenario. And eats the heart and becomes possessed by the spirit of Jason. And from there, his spirit just bounces around from person to person. And it's really lame. It's like an attempt to modernize it, I guess, for that time. And I can't do it. This is the only one, really, that I won't watch. I don't like the gimmick of his soul going from person to person. It feels like they didn't learn their lesson with the backlash that came from A New Beginning. And after this one, the franchise was dormant for a pretty long time until we get to Spacin'. That is Jason X. Let's come up here. It's here. Get up there, buddy. Jason X. Let's take Jason to space. Where else could we possibly go with it? Incredible. This one has the freeze dry ice cryo freeze face smash kill. It has the ladies, the campers in the sleeping bag and the tree. Like, it's just, this one is just completely off the rails, insane. This is like the party movie that you put on if you have like a large group of people over that are like, let's watch a scary movie that isn't scary at all. It's just kind of more fun. I love it. I think it's so ridiculous. Kane Hodder gets that upgrade and just looks like the burliest frontman for a metal band you've ever seen. And like the way he walks is like perfectly, like, it's incredible. He really is what people think of when they think of Jason, because like he had that thing on lock. Um, After that, we get the mashup everyone wanted: Freddy versus Jason. Um, it's gonna come right down here to B tier. Robert Englund is incredible as Freddy. I think I might like the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise even a little bit more than I do Friday the 13th. Freddy vs. Jason. Really cool idea, really cool inventive scenes and sequences, but like overall it just doesn't come together. It takes a long time to get to Freddy versus Jason. For a good portion of the runtime, it's Freddy and Jason like kill some kids. Like, it's really cool to see Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger again. It's just, something about it. Like, it's really cool to look at, but it's like empty calorie movie watching, where you're like, this is fine. Like, I'm not gonna remember this when it's over, but like, yeah, they're to hella fighting right now. And last but not least, 2009 remake Friday the 13th. Derek Mears takes over as Jason. Incredible Jason. I am really disappointed that we have not got, and probably won't get, a second movie with him as Jason, because the physicality he brought to it was intense. He was a very intense, wild, like rabid type of Jason, and I really, really enjoyed that. The movie itself, I'm gonna straddle. I don't know. It's either a B or an A. I'm gonna go A minus. Like, imagine B plus, A minus, somewhere in there. Um, I really, really like what this one did, and I liked it more and more the more times I've rewatched it. I think it does a good job of paying homage to the franchise and like hitting those beats of the earlier movies in the franchise, while also like updating it to today's horror audience, which was like way more geared towards like intense gore and shocking horror. Like, this was around the time that like all of those franchises were getting those like intense gritty reboots that just eliminated the camp and went back to like trying to just be as like brutal and like straightforward horror as it could be. So this one, the longer it goes, like, you do get those like nods to the campiness of the old series, but it's a far more brutal movie than almost all of the other ones in the franchise. And it plays really well to the character of Jason, who before this, like by the time we got to the last couple, he was kind of just lumbering around like a zombie because he had like died and reanimated so many times. So this one, where you see him as like a feral, like hunter type almost, like you see like his traps around the camp and like his tunnels everywhere. Like, there's some really cool ideas that really bring a lot to the character, even though he's a wordless, faceless for the majority of the movie killing machine. Some brutal kills and some genuinely good scares too, and that's something that starts to disappear in the latter stages of those movies as well. Is like they just get less and less scary. They kind of get more and more focused on the camp and then like the kill scene. And so this one, going back to like that tension and that just flat out jump scare quality, really helps it stand out from the rest while still feeling relatively true to the original franchise. So there's a few things that I think everyone probably thinks of when they think of a Friday the 13th movie, outside of obviously just like Jason and his machete and like the creepy music. But Friday the 13th, as the movies went on, it felt like it feels like they like started like not like running out of ideas, but like they had like a checklist of things that needed to be included in it for it to be a Friday the 13th movie. So you'll get like these random like forced in shots of nudity or these like weird like extra shots of like a dead body or of the gore, like that just feels like it's in there for the sake of like crossing it off a list. And I think that type of feeling really starts to permeate the last few movies in the franchise, really kind of start to feel like they're like, okay, we got to shoehorn this in somehow because this is what the people want to see. And like sometimes they do it to like the detriment of the mood of the movie or the story or even the characters themselves, which not to say that like Friday the 13th was like groundbreaking in its characterizations. The idea of like a final girl is like a real horror, not cliche, but like that's a staple of horror. And early on in the franchise, part one, part two, has some really strong final girls in not just the franchise, but all of horror. They're two of the stronger final girls and more memorable final girls outside of like the name actresses like Jamie Lee Curtis, where, you know, you kind of lose that as the franchise goes on. The characters get a little more one dimensional. They get a little more, you know, focused on other things. And like that type of like anchor to the movie just diminishes the overall quality of the movie to me. Like I said, these are just my rankings. Please let me know what your thoughts are on the franchise in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy ranking lists like this, if you want to see more videos like this. And let me know. Let me know what your favorite Friday the 13th movie is. So thank you for watching, and I will be back soon.